I was doing 80 miles an hour on a road slick with black ice, and my hands were perfectly steady, no shaking, no hesitation in the passenger seat. Beside me was empty. The lever still warmed the 3 boxes of hand-painted truffles, the ones I had spent for months perfecting, were gone. My phone buzzed against the center console, lighting up the dark cabin every 3 seconds. Mum again, 12 missed calls, 7 texts. The last one read, "Where are you?" I did not feel panic. I did not feel guilt. For the first time in 28 years, I felt something else. Cold, clinical, precise. I picked up the phone and pressed answer. Silence, heavy, expectant, waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to beg. "Did you enjoy my gift?" I asked. My voice was flat. Strange, barely mine. Before she could scream, before she could demand, I turned the car around. I pressed the red button, tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, and watched the speedometer climb. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to walk away from a family gathering just to save your sanity? Tell me I am not the only one who has had to make that choice, because to understand why I left, you have to understand the place I was running from. We called it the Glass Fortress, my parents' winter estate in Lake Tahoe, a sprawling monument of steel beams and floor-to-ceiling windows. It looked less like a home and more like a corporate headquarters. Beautiful in the way a scalpel is beautiful, shiny, expensive, capable of cutting you open. I had arrived 48 hours earlier, carrying the scent of vanilla bean and tempered cocoa butter into a house that smelled only of lemon polish and judgment. My name is Alina Vance, and in a family of sharks, I was the only one who bled my father Arthur. Vance was a federal judge, my mother Catherine, a retired prosecutor who treated social climbing like a blood sport. Then there were my siblings. Julian, a corporate litigator, billing $800 an hour to argue about commerce. Bianca, working in mergers and acquisitions, stripping companies for parts. And then there was me, the chokler. The disappointment. Dinner at the Vance house was not a meal, it was a cross-examination. We sat at an imported marble table, cold to the touch. My father at the head, treating the roasted duck like evidence. "So Alina," Julian said that first night, swirling his wine, "are you still operating out of that shared kitchen in the city? Or have you finally realized the margins on sugar do not fund retirement business?" "Is good," I said, eyes locked on my plate. "I just hired my first assistant." Bianca laughed, sharp, brittle. "An assistant for what? To help you lick the spoons? Come on, Alina, Dad's clerks make more in a summer bonus than you make in a fiscal year." My mother sighed, the sigh of a martyr. "Now, Bianca, be nice. Alina is artistic. Not everyone is built for the real world." That was the story. I was the soft one, the fragile one, the child playing with chocolate while the adults ran the world. But as I watched them dissect my life with the same casual cruelty they used on case law, something clicked. They did not want me to succeed. My failure was the only thing they all agreed on. It was the glue holding their fragile egos together. The breaking point did not happen at dinner, it happened in the study. 2 p.m., Christmas Eve. I had finished wrapping the bespoke truffle collections I had made for each of them. These were not just chocolates, they were apologies wrapped in gold foil. For my father, dark chocolate infused with aged whiskey and smoked sea salt, serious, commanding. For my mother, white chocolate ganache, edible gold, leaf, rose, water, elegant, expensive, purely aesthetic. I wanted to leave them on my father's desk, a surprise, a silent plea to see me not as a failure but as an artist. I wore socks, my footsteps were soundless, the study door was cracked open. An inch I reached for it, then I heard my name. "We cannot keep enabling this delusion, Arthur," said his closing argument. Voice. Alina is 28, she is barely clearing $48. $0 a year selling cookies. It is embarrassing, it is not just the money. Bianca added, paper, rustled. I pulled her credit report. She is carrying business debt, 1 bad month from insolvency. We need to intervene. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze. The boxers clutched to my chest. "I agree," my father said. His voice was a gavel. "Tonight after dinner, we do this structurally. Facts only, no emotion. We tell her the hobby phase is over. I have spoken to the firm." Julian continued, "We can place her as a paralegal, data entry, mindless, but it pays $60. 0 benefits included. She needs structure. She needs to be managed." "And the room?" my mother asked. "Cousin Vanessa's clerkship starts in February. She will need it," my father said. "Turn Elena's room into file storage. If she takes the job, she rents a studio in the city. If she does not, we cut her off. No safety net. What about her little business? My mother asked. She thinks she is an entrepreneur. It is not a business, Catherine. My father said, disdain thick in his voice. It is an easy bake oven phase that lasted a decade. She is sugarcoating reality. It is time we force her to grow up. I stood there in the hallway, the heat draining from my body. It was not just disrespect, it was strategy. They pulled my credit, lined up a job I would hate, planned to erase my bedroom, my sanctuary, to store legal files, and in that moment the hurt disappeared, replaced by clarity. I was looking at a system in family therapy. There is a concept called the identified patient. One person is chosen to carry all the dysfunction so everyone else can pretend they are fine. That person was me. By focusing on my failure, they did not have to face the truth that my father was emotionally absent, my mother deeply insecure, and my siblings miserable workaholics. They did not just think I was a failure, and that is when I finally understood why I had to leave. They needed me to be one. My incompetence was the pedestal they stood on. If I stayed for that dinner, if I sat there and let them present their evidence, I would be accepting that role forever. I would be validating their court. I backed away from the door, step by silent step, until I was around the corner. Then I turned and ran to my room. I did not cry, I did not hyperventilate. I felt a strange, buzzing energy in my fingertips. I looked around the bedroom that had been mine for 20 years. The lavender walls, the bookshelf filled with my culinary school textbooks, the framed photos of us skiing when we were actually happy. They were going to turn this into a storage closet. They had already evicted me in their minds. They were just waiting to serve the paperwork. I opened my suitcase on the bed. I did not pack everything. I only packed what I needed to survive: my laptop, my recipe journal, my chef's knives. I left the clothes my mother had bought me, the stiff preppy outfit she wanted me to wear to fit in. Then I looked at the chocolates. 3 boxes, hundreds of hours of tempering and filling and hand painting. I had stayed up until 4 in the morning for 3 weeks straight to get the shine on the Ganesh perfectly reflective. I had poured my soul into these because I thought if I made something perfect enough, they would finally have to love me. I realize now that love was not a transaction. You could not buy it with achievement. You could not earn it with perfection. I walked downstairs. The house was quiet. They were all still. In the study, I walked into the dining room. The table was already set for dinner beside my place setting. There was a yellow legal pad and a stack of printed spreadsheets. The intervention materials. I placed the 3 boxes of chocolates directly on top of the legal pad. I took a pen from my pocket and pulled a piece of heavy cardstock from my bag. I wrote 3 words: the defense rests. I placed the note on top of the chocolates. Then I put on my coat, grabbed my bag, and walked out the front door. The air outside was thin and biting, the kind of cold that hurts your lungs. The snow crunched under my boots, a sound that felt impossibly loud in the silence of the mountains. I got into my car and started the engine. As I pulled out of the long winding driveway, I've thought about the law of detachment in negotiation and in life. The person with the most power is the one who is willing to walk away. For years, I had been begging for a seat at their table. I had been fighting for a verdict of not guilty, but you cannot win a trial when the judge and jury are the same people. Leaving was not quitting, it was a jurisdiction change. I was not running away from home, I was evicting them from my life. 3 months passed. 90 days of absolute radio silence. I blocked their numbers. I filtered their emails to a folder I never opened. I did not explain myself. I did not send a follow-up letter. I just vanished. The silence was terrifying at first, but then it became fuel. Without the constant noise of their criticism, I found I had double the energy. I was not spending my days recovering from their emotional cuts. I was spending them building. I moved out of the shared kitchen and leased a small rundown commercial space in the industrial district. It had no windows, and the ventilation rattled, but it was mine. I worked 8-hour days. My hands were constantly stained with cocoa powder, my forearms marked with the small burns that are the badges of a pastry chef. I slept on a cot in the back office because I could not afford an apartment and the rent on the kitchen at the same time. I stopped trying to make pretty chocolates for socialites. I started making bold, aggressive flavors. I pitched to high-end hotels, luxury car dealerships, corporate gifting agencies. Then the breakthrough happened. I got a meeting with the procurement director for the Ritz Carlton chain. They were looking for a new, exclusive amenities partner. I walked into that meeting, wearing my chef's coat, smelling of dark roast coffee and ambition. I did not try to be a lawyer or a businesswoman. I just let them taste the product. I walked out with a contract worth $350,000 a year. I was celebrating with a lukewarm coffee in a shop downtown when I saw him, Julian. He spotted me through the window and marched in looking like he was ready to serve a subpoena. He sat down at my table without asking. We have been worried sick. Elena, he said, though he looked more annoyed than worried. Mom is a wreck. Dad is furious. Do you have any idea how selfish you are being? I took a sip of my coffee. Hello, Julian, you need to come home for Easter, he said, cutting straight to the point. Dad has a neighbor, Justice Sterling. He is on the air. Supreme Court shortlist. He is coming to brunch. Dad needs the whole family there. It looks bad if his daughter is estranged. It implies a lack of domestic control. Domestic control, I repeated, a small smile playing on my lips. Is that what I am, a compliance issue? Stop playing games, he snapped. Dan is willing to overlook your little stunt at Christmas. We will not mention the paralegal job for now. Just come to brunch, wear something appropriate. Do not talk about your debts. I looked at my brother. He was wearing a $5,000 suit, but he looked exhausted. He was just another employee in our father's firm. Another cog in the machine. I cannot make it, Julian, I said, standing up. I am working on what? He scoffed, burning another batch of brownies. I pulled a business card from my pocket, my new card with the gold foil logo I had designed myself. I slid it across the table. I have a contract to fulfill, I said. Enjoy the brunch. Easter Sunday arrived. I was not at the Glass Fortress. I was in my kitchen, overseeing a production run of 5,000 units, but I heard the story later. I heard every delicious detail from my Ali Maya, whose sister worked as a server for the catering company. My parents hired. The scene was set perfectly. The crystal was polished. The view of the lake was pristine. My parents, Julian and Bianca, were standing in the foyer, stiff and eager, waiting for Justice Sterling. This was the man my father had spent 20 years trying to impress. He was the ultimate authority figure, the one person whose validation my father craved. Justice Sterling walked in, a tall man with silver hair and a kind face. He shook my father's hand, greeted my mother, and then looked around the room with a confused expression. But where is the artist? Justice Sterling asked. My father blinked. I am sorry, the genius, Sterling said, smiling, the one behind Vance Velvet. I assumed, given the last name, she was your daughter. I was so looking forward to meeting the person who created the midnight balsamic truffle. My wife and I order them by the case. We send them to everyone in DC. The silence in the foyer was absolute. My mother's smile froze in place. Julian looked like he had swallowed a lemon. Elena, my father asked, his voice weak. You know Elena, know her? Sterling laughed. I am her biggest fan. In fact, when I heard she was expanding, I put her in touch with the Ritz-Carlton Group. I told them, if you do not sign this girl, you do not have taste the blood drained from my father's face, the easy bake oven phase, the wasted life, the girl they were going to force into a data entry job. She was not a failure, she was the reason. The most important man in the room was there. This is the paradox of success in a toxic family. They are incapable of seeing your worth because they are looking at you through the lens of their own insecurity. They need a stranger, someone with higher status than them, to tell them you are valuable. They do not trust their own eyes. They only trust the hierarchy, and in that moment the hierarchy had flipped upside down. She is not here, my mother stammered. She had a pressing business engagement. A shame, Sterling said, his disappointment palpable. He looked at my father with a new expression. It was not admiration anymore, it was confusion. You must be incredibly proud of her to build something like that from scratch. That takes a kind of grit most people do not have. Yes, my father choked out. Yes, we are. My phone rang at 11:30 in the morning. It was my mother. I knew exactly why she was calling. They were panicking. They needed the prop back on stage. I looked at the phone. I was holding a signed purchase order in my other hand. The ink was still fresh. I answered. Alina, my mother's voice was breathless, frantic. Where are you? You need to get here now, Justice. Sterling is here. He loves your chocolate. He wants to meet you. We can hold brunch for an hour. Just get in the car. I leaned back against the stainless steel counter of my kitchen. The air smelled of sugar and victory. I cannot, Mother, I said calmly. I am in the middle of a production cycle. Production cycle, she hissed. Alina, this is Justice Sterling. Do you understand what he can do for your father's career? Put down the spoon. And get over here. I am afraid I am booked, I said, but I am glad you finally tasted the potential. Alina, please, she said, and then her voice broke for the first time. I heard fear. We did not know you knew, I said, my voice cold and factual. You knew exactly who I was. You just did not like it, because it did not look like you. Tell the Justice I said hello and tell Dad that the easy bake oven just paid off my loans. I hung up. Maya, standing across the counter, grinned and handed me a spatula back. To work, boss, back to work, I said. Justice Sterling left the brunch early that day. The catering staff reported that the conversation was awkward, stilted. My father could not recover the momentum. The illusion of the perfect, powerful Vance family had been shattered, not by a scream, but by an absence that night. I sat in my empty, quiet kitchen. I ate a truffle, one of the ones I had designed for myself. It tasted like dark chocolate and chili pepper, sweet with a kick of heat. I realized that I had spent my whole life waiting for a verdict from a court that had no jurisdiction over me. I had let them be the judge, jury, and executioner of my self-worth. But today I had pardoned myself. I did not need their table. I had built my own, and the food here tasted so much better. If you have ever had to build your own table because you were not welcome at theirs, hit that like button. Share this story with the black sheep in your life who needs to hear it, and tell me in the comments what is the best success you have had since walking away.